Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of the UE Sentinel with heavy steps. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't care. Something was wrong with the universe today, and he could feel it in his bones. The space around them looked normal. Stars twinkled in the distance, like tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet. But the instruments told a different story. The quantum communication array had been screaming alerts for the past 6 hours, picking up signals that shouldn't exist. "Captain, you need to see this." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her workstation, her face pale. She had been the ship's expert on alien languages for 5 years, but Jake had never seen her look this worried. Lisa pushed her brown hair behind her ear and pointed at the screen. "The signal is coming from outside our galaxy, way outside, from the direction of Andromeda." Jake felt his stomach drop. Andromeda was their neighbor galaxy, but it was also dead. Every probe they had sent in that direction came back with the same report. No life, no signals. Nothing but empty space and cold stars. "That's impossible," Jake said, but even as he spoke, he knew Lisa wouldn't call him over for a mistake. She was too good at her job. "I know it sounds crazy, but look at this." Lisa's fingers danced over the controls. The speakers crackled to life, filling the bridge with static, and then something else. Something that made every person on the bridge stop what they were doing. It sounded like screaming. Not human screaming, but something desperate and afraid. The sound rose and fell like waves, and underneath it all was a pattern, a rhythm that suggested intelligence. "How long has this been going on?" Jake asked. "The computer says the signal started 3 days ago, but it was too weak to notice. It's getting stronger every hour." Lisa pulled up more data on her screen. "Captain, this isn't just random noise. There's structure here, language, multiple languages actually." Commander Alex Rodriguez joined them at the workstation. Alex had been Jake's second in command for 2 years, and Jake trusted him more than anyone else on the ship. If Alex looked worried, then Jake knew they had a real problem. "What are we looking at?" Alex asked. "A message from a dead galaxy," Lisa said. "And it's not just one message. It's thousands of them, all broadcast at the same time, on every frequency we can detect." Jake stared at the data scrolling across the screen. The patterns looked almost familiar, like he was seeing something he should recognize, but couldn't quite remember. "Can you translate any of it?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Some of it. The computer has been working on it since the signal got strong enough to analyze. What we're hearing isn't one species trying to communicate. It's dozens of them, maybe hundreds." She touched another control, and the screaming faded into something that sounded almost like words. The computer had cleaned up the signal and was trying to match it against every known language in their database. "The translation is rough," Lisa warned, "but I think I've got the basic message." The speakers crackled again, and this time they heard something that chilled everyone on the bridge. It was a voice, artificial and flat from the computer's translation, but the words were clear enough. "We are the last. The Devourer has taken everything. Our worlds are gone. Our people are gone. We broadcast this message with our final power, hoping someone will hear." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. "Keep going." The voice continued. "Do not come here. Do not try to help us. Save yourselves. The Devourer moves between the stars, like death itself. It feeds on life, on hope, on everything that makes existence worth living." "There's more," Lisa said quietly. "A lot more." The message went on for several minutes. It told the story of a galaxy that had been full of life just a few years ago. Billions of worlds with trillions of beings living, loving, and building civilizations. That stretched across space. Then the Devourer came. The beings sending the message didn't know where it came from or what it really was. They only knew what it did. It moved from system to system, consuming everything in its path, not just destroying it, but somehow feeding on the life force itself. Worlds didn't just die when the devourer arrived. They became empty, drained of everything that had ever made them alive. Even the plants withered into dust. The worst part, the translated voice said, is that it learns. Each world it consumes makes it stronger and smarter. It knows our tactics now. It knows our weaknesses. We cannot fight it anymore. Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was listening to every word, and he could see the fear in their eyes. Fear, but also something else. Anger. Is there more? He asked. Lisa nodded. The final part is ... different. It's not just information. It's a warning. She played the last section of the message. The voice that came through the speakers sounded tired, defeated, but still determined. We have detected movement at the edge of our galaxy. The devourer is not satisfied with just our worlds. It is looking beyond to other galaxies where life still exists. We believe it will move toward what you call the Milky Way. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. The Milky Way was their home. Earth, with its billions of people. The colony worlds, where humans had built new lives. Their alien allies who had become friends over the decades. We are transmitting everything we know, the voice continued. Star charts, tactical data, everything we learned about this enemy. But please, we beg, you do not come here. Do not try to save us. It is too late for us. Use this time to prepare your defenses. Protect the innocent among you. We failed, but maybe you can succeed where we could not. The message ended with coordinates. Location data for the source of the transmission, deep in the space between galaxies. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Jake could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines and the quiet beeping of various instruments. Normal sounds of a normal day in space, but nothing felt normal anymore. Captain, Alex said finally, what do we do? Jake stared at the screen showing. The coordinates. Somewhere out there, in the dark between galaxies, the last survivors of an entire galaxy were dying alone. They had used their final power not to call for help, but to warn others to stay away. We contact Earth, Jake said. Admiral Phillips needs to know about this immediately. And then? Lisa asked. Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about the message, about the voice that had sounded so tired and defeated. But he also thought about something else the voice had said. Protect the innocent. Then we figure out what humanity is going to do about it, he said. Alex raised an eyebrow. Sir, they specifically warned us not to come. They did, Jake agreed. But they also sent us everything they've learned about this thing. Why would they do that if they really wanted us to just hide? Lisa looked at the data still streaming across her screen. Maybe because they knew we wouldn't just hide. Maybe because they knew humans well enough to understand what we'd do when we heard about something that hunts the innocent. Jake nodded slowly. Get me a secure channel to Earth. And Lisa, I want you to keep working on that translation. I have a feeling we're going to need to understand every word of what they're trying to tell us. As his crew got to work, Jake stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire galaxy had died alone, but they hadn't died in silence. They had made sure their final act was to warn others. The question now was what humanity would do with that warning. Admiral Kate Phillips stood in the center of the council chamber, watching as representatives from 12 different species took their seats around the massive circular table. The chamber was built inside Earth's largest orbital station, and through the clear walls, she could see the blue marble of humanity's homeworld turning slowly below them. 3 days had passed since Captain Morrison's message arrived. 3 days of emergency meetings, frantic calculations, and growing fear. Throughout the galaxy, the news had spread quickly despite attempts to keep it classified. When an entire galaxy dies and sends a warning message, word gets out. Kate looked around the table at the faces of humanity's allies. Some were familiar, others still strange to human eyes, even after decades of friendship. The Zephyrians appeared. As shifting columns of blue light, their energy forms pulsing with what Kate had learned to recognize as anxiety. The Karathi delegation sat perfectly still, their stone-like faces showing no emotion, but their deep voices had been full of concern during the preliminary meetings. Dr. Lisa Carter sat at the human delegation table, looking tired but determined. She had been working around the clock to decode more of the Andromeda message, and what she had found was not encouraging. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Kate began. "I know many of you had to travel great distances to be here. Dr. Carter, please share what you've learned." Lisa stood and activated the holographic display in the center of the table. The image showed a three-dimensional map of the local galactic group, with Andromeda highlighted in red. "The situation is worse than we initially thought," Lisa said. "We've decoded approximately 60% of the transmission now. The entity they call the Devourer has been active in Andromeda for what appears to be several thousand years." A ripple of concern went through the assembled delegates. The Valonian representative, a tall being with silver skin and large black eyes, leaned forward. "Several thousand years? How is that possible? Our deep space sensors should have detected such activity." "That's the problem," Lisa replied. "This thing doesn't just destroy life. It somehow erases the energy signature that life creates. When a world dies to the Devourer, it doesn't just become lifeless. It becomes invisible to most of our detection methods." Professor Ben Harper, Earth's leading expert on space-time phenomena, stood up from his seat in the human section. His white hair was messy from running his hands through it, a habit he had when dealing with impossible problems. "I've been analyzing the data with my team," Ben said. "The Devourer appears to exist partially outside normal spacetime. That's why we never detected it. It's not fully in our dimension when it moves between systems." The Zephyrian representative, a being called Lightweaver, spoke in their musical voice. "This explains the disturbances our people have sensed at the galaxy's edge. We thought they were natural phenomena, but now we understand. This creature has been testing our defenses." Kate felt her stomach tighten. "Testing them how?" "Small probes of dark energy, moving along the outer rim of our galaxy. We detected them 6 months ago, but couldn't identify their source. Now we know. The Devourer has been studying us." The room fell silent. Kate looked around the table and saw fear in every face, whether human, alien, or energy being. But she also saw something else. Determination. The Karathi delegate, an ancient being named Stoneheart, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. "What do the tactical analyzes suggest?" Lisa activated another display, showing fleet positions and defensive capabilities. "Throughout the galaxy. Based on what happened in Andromeda, conventional warfare is ineffective. The Devourer doesn't fight like a normal enemy. It simply consumes everything in its path. Then we prepare evacuation plans," said the Valonian delegate. "We identify the most defensible systems and consolidate our populations there." "That's exactly what Andromeda tried," Ben said, shaking his head. "According to the message, they evacuated entire sectors, built massive defense stations, and created fortress worlds. None of it worked. The Devourer just grew stronger with each world it consumed." Kate watched the debate that followed. Some delegates argued for immediate evacuation of border systems. Others wanted to build a massive defensive line at the galaxy's edge. A few suggested trying to communicate with the Devourer to find out what it wanted, but one voice was notably quiet during all of this. Captain Jake Morrison sat at the far end of the human table, studying the star charts that Lisa had displayed. Kate had known Jake for 10 years, and she recognized the look on his face. He was planning something. "Captain Morrison," Kate said, interrupting the debate, "you've been quiet. What are your thoughts?" Jake stood slowly and walked to the center of the chamber. "I've been reading the complete message from Andromeda. All of it, not just the warnings." He touched the control panel, and new information appeared on the display. "Buried in the tactical data they sent us, there's something interesting. The Devourer's movement pattern." The display showed a three-dimensional map of Andromeda with red lines tracing paths between star systems. "It doesn't move randomly," Jake continued. "It follows a specific pattern, hitting systems in a calculated order. And according to the final transmissions, it left Andromeda by a specific route." "What does that tell us?" asked Lightweaver. "It tells us that somewhere between Andromeda and our galaxy there might be survivors." The message mentioned refugee fleets that managed to escape before their worlds were consumed. Some of them might still be out there, in the void between galaxies. The Korathi delegate rumbled disapproval. Even if that were true, the distances involved are impossible. No ship could survive the journey between galaxies. "Human ships could," Jake said quietly. The room erupted in protests. Multiple delegates spoke at once, their voices mixing into a chaos of different languages and concerns. Kate held up her hand for silence. "Captain, are you seriously suggesting we send ships into intergalactic space?" "I'm suggesting we do what humans always do," Jake replied. "We go help people who need help. The message specifically warned us not to come," the Velonian delegate pointed out. "The message warned us not to come to Andromeda," Jake corrected. "But they also sent us coordinates, tactical data, and everything they learned about the Devourer. Why would they do that if they really wanted us to just hide and wait to die?" Lisa looked up from her datapad. "Jake might be right. I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in the message. The emotional content suggests they were hoping someone would be brave enough to try." Ben Harper nodded slowly. "The humans do have the most advanced long-range exploration ships. If anyone could make the journey, it would be them." "This is madness," said another delegate. "You're talking about sending ships into the void with no guarantee they'll find anything or be able to return." Kate looked around the table at her allies. Some looked horrified at the suggestion. Others appeared thoughtful. The Zephyrians were pulsing with what she recognized as excitement. "What would be the mission parameters?" she asked Jake. "Reconnaissance first," Jake replied. "A small fleet, fast ships, designed for long-range exploration. We find out if there are survivors, gather intelligence on the Devourer's current position, and report back." "And if you find survivors?" Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We do whatever we can to help them." Stoneheart leaned forward. "And if you encounter the Devourer itself, then we learn everything we can about it before we die," Jake said simply. "Because right now, we know almost nothing about how to fight this thing. The people of Andromeda tried for thousands of years and failed. Maybe they failed because they were fighting alone." Kate felt something stir in her chest. It was the same feeling she'd had when she first joined the space service. The same feeling that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. The need to explore, to help, to never give up even when the odds were impossible. "The Council will need to vote," she said. "I know," Jake replied. "But I wanted everyone to understand what we're really facing here. We can build all the defenses we want, but eventually that thing is going to reach our galaxy. When it does, we can either face it as separate species trying to protect ourselves, or we can face it together with whatever allies we can find." He looked around the room at each delegate in turn. "The people of Andromeda died alone, but they made sure we wouldn't have to." Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Sentinel watching the last of the familiar stars disappear behind them. They had been traveling for 6 weeks now, moving deeper into the void between galaxies than any human ship had ever gone before. The fleet was small, just 3 ships. The Sentinel led the way, equipped with the most advanced sensors and communication systems Earth could build. Captain Ryan Bell's destroyer Phoenix flew beside them, bristling with weapons that probably wouldn't work against their target, but made everyone feel a little better anyway. The third ship, Captain Maria Santos's science vessel Explorer, carried the best scanning equipment and research labs they could fit into a ship designed for deep space missions. Distance from home galaxy? Jake asked. Lieutenant Commander Steve Johnson looked up from his navigation station. 2.7 million. Light years, sir. We're officially in no man's land now. Jake nodded. They had passed the point of no return 3 days ago. Even with their experimental jump drives, they were now too far from home to make it back if something went wrong with their fuel systems. It was a calculated risk that every person on all 3 ships had volunteered for. Dr. Lisa Carter worked at her station, constantly monitoring the quantum communication array for any sign of the signals they were following. The message from Andromeda had included coordinates, but coordinates in intergalactic space were tricky things, with no nearby stars to use as reference points. They were essentially flying blind toward a spot in the universe that might or might not contain anything useful. Any change in the signal strength? Jake asked. Getting stronger, Lisa replied. Whatever's out there, we're definitely heading in the right direction. Commander Alex Rodriguez joined Jake at the forward viewing ports. Through the transparent aluminum, they could see nothing but darkness. No stars, no nebulae, no familiar landmarks of any kind. Just the endless black of empty space. I keep thinking about what Admiral Phillips said before we left, Alex said quietly, about how this might be the last anyone ever sees of us. Jake remembered that conversation. Kate had pulled him aside the night before departure, offering him one last chance to change his mind. The mission was too dangerous, she had said. The chances of success were too small. But she had also said she understood why he felt they had to try. Contact on sensors, Steve called out suddenly. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark 15. Jake moved quickly to the sensor station. What are we looking at? I'm not sure, sir. The readings are ... strange. Like ships, but not quite. Ships. They're big, whatever they are. Lisa looked up from her communication station. The signals are definitely coming from that direction. And Jake, I'm picking up something else. Active transmissions. Someone over there is still alive. Jake felt his heart rate increase. Open a channel to Phoenix and Explorer. All ships, reduce speed and approach carefully. We don't know what we're walking into. The 3 human ships moved forward slowly, their sensors probing the darkness ahead. As they got closer, the contacts became clearer on their screens. What they found was beyond anything they had imagined. That it wasn't a fleet of ships in any normal sense. It was a mobile city, maybe even a mobile world. Hundreds of vessels of different sizes and designs were connected together by massive cables and transit tubes. Some ships looked familiar, with the clean lines and practical design that marked advanced spacefaring civilizations. Others were strange, organic-looking things that seemed to have been grown rather than built. My God, Maria Santos's voice came over the communication channel from the Explorer. How many people do you think are living in that thing? Steve was running calculations on his computer. Based on size estimates, sir, I'd say millions, maybe tens of millions. As they approached, smaller ships detached from the main structure and moved to intercept them. Jake tensed, ready to order defensive maneuvers, but the approaching vessels made no hostile moves. Instead, they formed what looked like an escort formation. "We're receiving a transmission," Lisa announced. "Multiple languages, but I'm getting a translation matrix working." The main screen lit up with an image that made everyone on the bridge stop and stare. The being looking back at them was clearly not human, but there was something in its eyes that Jake recognized immediately. It was the look of someone who had seen too much, lost too much, but was still fighting to survive. The creature had pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. When it spoke, the computer's translation came through clearly. "Unknown vessels, this is the keeper of the wandering fleet. You are not of the consumed galaxy, yet you move through the void as if you belong here. What are you?" Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Sentinel. We received your message. We came to help." The being's eyes widened in what appeared to be surprise, then something that might have been hope. "You ... you came from the living galaxy? The one we sent warnings to? But we told you not to come. We told you to save yourselves." "Humans don't abandon people who need help," Jake said simply. There was a long pause. Then the keeper spoke again, and this time there was emotion in its voice that the translation system couldn't quite capture. "Follow our guide ships. We will bring you to the heart chamber. But I must warn you, travelers from the living galaxy, the one you call the Devourer knows we are here. It has been hunting us for many cycles. By coming here, you may have doomed yourselves to share our fate." The escort ships led them deeper into the Mogul city. As they flew between the connected vessels, Jake could see through transparent sections into the lives of the refugees. Children played in zero-gravity chambers. Adults worked at various tasks. Beings from dozens of different species had found ways to live together in this floating sanctuary. But he also saw the signs of a people who had been running for a very long time. Many of the ships showed battle damage that had been repaired with whatever materials were available. Some sections were clearly overcrowded, with families sharing spaces meant for much smaller groups. "Captain," Alex said quietly, "look at the outer edge of the formation." Jake followed his gaze and saw what Alex meant. The ships on the outside of the formation were different from the others. They were heavily armed, scarred from battle, and positioned like guardships, protecting the more vulnerable vessels inside. They were led to a docking bay inside one of the largest vessels. As they disembarked, Jake was surprised to see that the artificial gravity and atmosphere were comfortable for humans. The refugees had clearly learned how to accommodate many different species over their long journey. The keeper met them in person, accompanied by a small group of other beings. Up close, Jake could see that the being was old, older than any human could become, but there was still strength in its movements. "I am honored to meet beings from the living galaxy," the keeper said, "though I fear your courage may have brought you to your deaths." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but at least you won't die alone." The keeper's large eyes seemed to study Jake for a long moment. Then it gestured for them to follow. "Come, there is much you need to know, and I fear we may not have much time. The Devourer has been quiet for too long. That usually means it is preparing for something." As they walked through corridors filled with refugees from a dead galaxy, Jake couldn't help but think about the children he had seen. They had been born in this wandering fleet, had never known a real home world, had never felt safe. That was going to change. Jake didn't know how yet, but he was going to make sure these people found safety, even if it meant standing against something that had already destroyed an entire galaxy dot behind him. Lisa was already setting up communication equipment to record everything the keeper was about to tell them. Alex was studying the defensive positions of the fleet, calculating strengths and weaknesses. Maria was taking readings on the ship's construction methods and the technology that kept millions of people alive in the void. They were three small human ships, impossibly far from home, facing an enemy that had already proven it could destroy entire galaxies. But Jake Morrison had never felt more certain about anything in his life. Humanity had come to help, and they were not going home without these people. The heart chamber of the refugee fleet was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever seen. The walls were covered with star maps from dozens of different civilizations, showing the slow retreat across Andromeda as world after world fell to the Devourer. In the center of the room, a massive holographic display showed their current position in the void between galaxies. The Keeper stood before the display, its pale blue skin seeming to glow in the light from the projectors. Around the chamber, representatives from other refugee species listened quietly as it spoke. "We have been running for 3,000 of your years," the Keeper said. "When the Devourer first appeared in our galaxy, we thought it was just another crisis to overcome. We had faced invasions before, survived natural disasters, built defenses against cosmic threats. But this was different." Jake watched as the display showed the progression of destruction across Andromeda. Red markers appeared system by system, each one representing billions of lives lost. "It does not simply destroy," the Keeper continued. "It consumes the very essence of life itself. When a world falls to the Devourer, it becomes empty in ways that normal death cannot achieve. The soil becomes sterile. The water becomes lifeless. Even the air seems to lose something vital." Dr. Lisa Carter was recording everything, but Jake could see the horror in her eyes as she listened. Commander Alex Rodriguez stood next to him, his face grim as he studied the tactical implications of what they were hearing. "How many survivors are there?" Jake asked. "In this fleet?" 47 million beings from 238 different worlds," the Keeper replied. "We are all that remains of a galaxy that once held trillions of lives." The number hit Jake like a physical blow. An entire galaxy reduced to less than 50 million survivors. It was genocide on a scale that was almost impossible to comprehend. "But you've learned how to fight it," Alex said. "You've survived this long." The Keeper made a sound that the translation system couldn't interpret, but Jake understood it anyway. It was bitter laughter. "We do not fight it, Commander Rodriguez. We run from it. Always running, never stopping, because the moment we pause, the moment we try to rest, it finds us." A new voice spoke from across the chamber. It belonged to a being that looked like it was made of crystalline structures, its body reflecting the light in beautiful patterns. "I am Crystal Song of the Harmony Worlds. My people were artists, musicians, creators of beauty. We thought our songs could touch any heart, reach any mind. We tried to communicate with the Devourer when it came to our worlds. The being's light dimmed. It listened to our music as it consumed our children. It felt no emotion, showed no mercy. It simply took everything and moved on." Jake felt anger building in his chest. Not just anger at the Devourer, but anger at the unfairness of it all. These people had done nothing wrong. They had simply existed, lived their lives, raised their families, and for that they had been hunted across space and time. "There has to be a way to stop it," he said. "Many have tried," the Keeper replied. "The military alliance of Sector 7 tried to fight it with massive battle fleets. The Technology Union tried to trap it with quantum barriers. The Peaceful Coalition tried to find uninhabited worlds to sacrifice to it, hoping it would leave populated systems alone. What happened to them? They are all gone. Every strategy, every weapon, every desperate plan, nothing worked. The Devourer simply adapted and grew stronger." Dr. Jenny Adams, the fleet's physicist who had come over from the Explorer, stepped forward. "Can we see the tactical data? The actual recordings of what happened when they tried to fight it?" The Keeper nodded and activated new displays. Jake watched in fascination and growing horror as the holographic images showed the final battles for Andromeda. Massive space stations firing weapons, that could destroy planets. Energy barriers that should have been impenetrable. Ships the size of moons moving in perfect formation. All of it was useless against the Devourer. The creature didn't fight like a normal enemy. It didn't have ships or weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, it was something like a living darkness that moved through space, reaching out with tendrils of energy that seemed to exist partially outside normal reality. It phases in and out of our dimension, Jenny said, studying the data. That's why conventional weapons don't work. You can't hit something that's not entirely in the same space you are. But it has to fully manifest to feed, the Keeper said. When it consumes a world's life force, it becomes solid, real. That is when it is most vulnerable. But also when it's most dangerous, Alex pointed out. Every time someone tried to attack it during feeding, it just consumed them too. Jake stared at the displays, his mind racing. There had to be something they were missing. Some weakness that could be exploited. But every analysis showed the same result. The Devourer was simply too powerful, too alien, too different from anything. They knew how to fight. Captain, Steve Johnson's voice came through his communicator. We're detecting movement on the long-range sensors. Something big coming this way. The chamber fell silent. Jake could see fear in every face around him, whether human or alien. The Keeper moved quickly to a communication panel. All ships, prepare for emergency jump, it announced. Pattern 7, scatter formation. This is not a drill. Alarms began, sounding throughout the massive fleet. Jake could hear the rumble of engines starting up, the hiss of docking clamps being released. In minutes, the organized formation of connected ships was breaking apart as each vessel prepared to flee in a different direction. How much time do we have? Jake asked. The Keeper checked its instruments. Based on previous encounters, perhaps 2 hours before it arrives. Less if it has learned to move faster. Jake made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. Our ships aren't leaving, he said. Captain Morrison, you do not understand, the Keeper said urgently. When the Devourer comes, everything dies. Your ships cannot help us. You will only add your lives to its feeding. Maybe, Jake replied. But these people have been running for 3,000 years. Someone needs to make a stand. Alex stepped up beside him. The captain's right. We came here to help, not to watch you run away again. This is madness, Crystal Song said. Your weapons will be as useless as ours were. Probably, Jake agreed. But maybe we'll learn something that can help next time. Lisa looked up from her translation equipment. Jake, I've been analyzing the refugee ship configurations. If we could get them all heading toward our galaxy in one coordinated group instead of scattering, they might actually make it to safety. How long would that take? Jake asked. To organize 47 million people and get them moving in the same direction? At least 6 hours, maybe more. Jake nodded grimly. Then we need to buy them 6 hours. The Keeper stared at him for a long moment. You would sacrifice your ships and crews for people you barely know? That's what humans do, Jake said simply. We protect people who can't protect themselves. He activated his communicator. Morrison to all human ships. Prepare for combat operations. We're going to give our new friends time to escape. Captain Ryan Bell's voice came back immediately. Understood, Jake. Phoenix is ready. Captain Maria Santos was next. Explorer standing by. We'll do what we can. Jake looked around the chamber at the faces of beings from dozens of different species. He saw fear there, but also something else. Hope. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone was willing to stand and fight for them, instead of just running away. Get your people moving toward our galaxy, Jake told the Keeper. We'll hold the line as long as we can. As the refugee fleet began its desperate evacuation, Jake Morrison prepared to face an enemy that had already destroyed an entire galaxy. He had 3 ships, less than 1,000 people, and weapons that probably wouldn't even scratch their target. But he also had something the Devourer had never encountered before. He had humans who refused to give up, even when giving up was the only logical choice. The Devourer appeared on their sensors like a hole in space itself. It wasn't black like the void around him. It was something worse than black, something that seemed to pull light and hope and life into itself and give nothing back. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, watching as the entity approached. It was massive beyond comprehension, stretching across thousands of kilometers of space. Dark tendrils writhed around its edges, reaching out like fingers searching for something to consume. Distance to target? Jake asked. 50,000 kilometers and closing, Lieutenant Commander Steve Johnson replied. His voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. Everyone was afraid. It would have been crazy not to be. Status. On the refugee fleet? Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her communication station. They're making good progress toward our galaxy, but they need more time. At least 4 more hours to get clear. Jake nodded. 4 hours. His 3 ships had to somehow hold off something that had destroyed an entire galaxy for 4 hours. The math didn't work in their favor. Captain Bell, Captain Santos, status report, Jake said into his communicator. Phoenix is ready for whatever we're about to do, Ryan Bell's voice came back. All weapons charged, all systems green. Explorer standing by, Maria Santos added. Jenny has some ideas about the quantum disruption patterns we detected. It's not much, but it might help. Through the viewing ports, Jake could see the refugee fleet in the distance. Thousands of ships moving in a coordinated evacuation, carrying 47 million survivors toward safety. Children who had never known a real home. Families who had been running for 3,000 years. Artists, scientists, teachers, ordinary. People who had committed no crime except existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Contact in 30 seconds, Steve announced. The Devourer moved closer, and Jake could see it more clearly now. It wasn't a ship or a creature in any normal sense. It was something that existed partially outside their reality, a darkness that seemed to bend space around itself. Tendrils of energy reached out from its center, and wherever they touched, the very fabric of space seemed to become empty. All ships, spread formation, Jake ordered. Make it work to get all of us. The 3 human ships separated, forming a triangle with several thousand kilometers between each vessel. It wasn't much, but it might force the Devourer to split its attention. The entity paused when it detected them. Jake could almost feel it studying these new ships, trying to understand what they were, and why they weren't running like everything else had encountered. Then it attacked. The first tendril of dark energy reached out toward the Phoenix. Jake watched in horror as the space around Ryan's ship began to twist and distort. But the Phoenix didn't just sit there and take it. Ryan activated his engines and dove toward the Devourer itself, firing every weapon his ship had, the missiles. And energy beams passed harmlessly through the creature's form. But something unexpected happened. The Devourer pulled back slightly, as if surprised by the direct attack. It's not used to prey that fights back, Alex Rodriguez said from beside Jake. Then let's give it something to think about, Jake replied. All ships, attack pattern Alpha. Concentrate fire on the center mass. The Sentinel and Explorer joined the Phoenix in a coordinated assault. Every weapon they had, every missile, every energy beam, all focused on the heart of the darkness. Most of the attacks passed through the creature without effect, but Jake noticed something important. Each time they hit it, the Devourer's form became slightly more solid, slightly more real. Jenny's quantum disruption idea, Lisa called out. She says if we can force it to manifest more fully in our dimension, we might be able to hurt it. How do we do that? By making it angry, Lisa replied. According to the refugee data, it becomes more solid when it's actively feeding or when it's been provoked. Jake almost smiled. Making something angry was definitely something humans were good at. All ships knew plan. We're going to annoy this thing until it decides to take us seriously. For the next hour, the 3 human ships played a deadly game of tag with the Devourer. They would dart in, fire everything they had, then retreat before the creature could grab them with its tendrils. It was like 3 mosquitoes attacking a Chi. Giant, but gradually, Jake could see it was working. The Devourer was becoming more solid, more present in their reality. Its attacks were becoming more focused, more angry. Dark energy lashed out at them with increasing violence, but it was also becoming vulnerable. Phoenix to Sentinel, Ryan's voice came over the radio. I'm reading energy fluctuations in its core. Whatever we're doing is working. Explorer to all ships, Maria added. Jenny thinks she's found a weak point. There's a quantum instability at the center of its mass. If we could hit it with a concentrated burst of energy at just the right moment. What kind of energy burst? Jake asked. There was a pause before Maria answered. The kind that would require a ship to fly directly into its core and detonate its reactor. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what Maria was suggesting. A suicide run. I'll do it, Jake said immediately. No, came Ryan's voice. Phoenix is the fastest. I can get there before it knows what's happening. The Explorer has the most powerful reactor, Maria argued. If we're going to do this, we need maximum yield. Jake looked out at the Devourer, which was now fully focused on destroying them. Its tendrils lashed out constantly, and it was getting closer to landing a solid hit. In the distance, he could see the refugee fleet, still moving toward safety. But still too close to be safe if they failed. There's another way, he said suddenly. We don't send one ship. We send all 3. Jake ... double quotes Alex, started. Think about it. This thing has never faced coordinated resistance before. Every time someone fought it, they eventually ran away or got picked off one by one. But what if we all hit it at exactly the same moment? What if we make it impossible for it to dodge or phase out? Lisa was working frantically at her station. I'm getting a signal from the refugee fleet. The keeper is saying something. The main screen lit up with the image of the pale blue being they had met in the heart chamber. But now, instead of despair, there was something else in its large, dark eyes. Determination. Captain Morrison, the keeper said, we have been running for 3,000 years. We have watched our worlds die, our people consumed, our hope fade. But today, for the first time since this nightmare began, we saw someone stand and fight for us. The image expanded to show other faces. Crystal Song and dozens of other refugee leaders. We will not run anymore, the keeper continued. Our ships are turning around. If you fight, we fight with you. No, Jake said immediately. Get your people to safety. That's what we're here for. Captain Morrison. Crystal Song's voice joined. The transmission. There are some things more important than safety. There are some stands that must be made, regardless of the cost. You taught us that. Jake watched as the refugee fleet began to turn around. Thousands of ships, carrying millions. Of survivors, coming back to face the thing that had hunted them across the universe. All ships, Jake said into his communicator. This is it. We coordinate our attack for maximum impact. We hit this thing with everything we have, all at the same time. Understood, Ryan replied. Ready when you are, Maria added. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Alex nodded at him. Lisa gave him a small smile. Steve saluted from his station. For Earth, Jake said. For the innocent, Alex added. For everyone who can't fight for themselves. Lisa finished. The 3 human ships accelerated toward the Devourer's core, followed by thousands of refugee vessels. It was the largest coordinated attack the creature had ever faced, led by 3 small ships from a species it had never encountered before. As they flew into the heart of darkness. Jake Morrison sent one final message on all frequencies, broadcasting across space to reach every civilization that might be listening. This is humanity. We received your warning about the Devourer. We found your survivors. And we stand with them. To anyone else out there facing this thing, you are not alone. We will never stop fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves. The explosion that followed lit up the void between galaxies, visible from millions of light years away. When it faded, the Devourer was gone, dispersed into quantum fragments that would take millions of years to reform, if they ever could. And in the silence that followed, 47 million refugees finally stopped running and began the long journey. Home to a galaxy where they would be welcomed, protected, and never abandoned again.